Так, следующий докладчик у нас дозовые нагрузки в некоторых населенных пунктах Гомельской и Брянских областей после Чернобыльской аварии. Докладывает Кристиан Бernhardsson, Швеция, представитель Швеции, город Malmö.
Thank you. And thank you very much for having me here, to give me the opportunity to have this talk about the radiation exposure in the Gomel-Bryansk. It's okay if I say it in English? It's understandable pictures. Let's see. So this is a very long project. Actually, it started as a Soviet Nordic cooperation already in 1990s. And then it continued as a Swedish-Russian project after a few years. And then there was a stop for a few years in the late 90s and the beginning of 2000. And then in 2006, when I started with the project, we continued with the same measurements of internal and external effective doses in the region. In 2008, also Belarus was included in this project with the Chernobyl committee and the local company Hygiene here in Gomel. And the first aim was to investigate external and internal effective doses. Then it also became one part to investigate the variability of the contaminated soil. And we also investigated new dosimeter materials. So the villages investigated are those ones in Russia, in Klintsy-Novosibkov region, in Bryansk, and also St-Petersburg, which is located here in Vetka region. And as you can see, the deposition levels is fairly the same in all of those villages. 1 to 2 megabecquerel per square meter. And then they have been decontaminated in different ways. Washing of houses and moving the soil from the ground, but some of the villages have not been decontaminated. And this have some effect on the final doses to the population. So this is the traditional map from this atlas. The deposition in 1986, and then it is the 7th-year dose. And you can see that they have created this map based on the decay of cesium. So those contaminated areas become smaller and smaller and smaller, symmetrically. And this is the method you use to estimate the dose, the lifetime dose. But I will show that it looks a little different. It's not so easy just to use the decay of cesium. So the measurements we have done have been to measure the whole body contents, as in this girl here with the sodium iodine detector put towards the stomach, and measurement during 1.5 minutes. And also teal dosimeters that the participants wear for 2 months, and to measure the external effective dose. And then we have also measured radiation level with high pressure ionization chambers and other radiation protection instruments, and also this new equipment, which is a sodium iodine detector in a backpack. So when you are walking in the areas, you get directly a map of the radiation level. So it's also coupled to GPS. And here in the end of the presentation I will tell about these results. It's from St-Petersburg, where we have measured radiation doses with salt, sodium chloride. Here is radiation level on different scales. So this is several kilometers between those spots. And this is in Vetka region outside of St-Petersburg. So for example, in the forest there is relatively high levels. And as you can see, when you go to different areas, the radiation level decreases quite significantly compared to the forest area. So inside brick houses, the levels are the smallest. And then you can see some effect on if it's decontaminated or not in the gardens. So this is several kilometers. And then if you go down to a few hundred meters, this is a school. So this is radiation level and the scale. And here is a map. So this is some grass area. This is the schoolyard, and this is the school, as you can see. And here is the playground for the children. And inside the school, the radiation level is, it's normal background levels. But if you just walk a few meters out in the schoolyard, here is asphalt and here is grass. There is a difference. About the factor of 10.
What is on axis? What is on axis?
This is actually total gamma counts, the fluence. So it's possible to translate it to microsieverts, and this maximum is approximately 1 microsievert per hour in dose rate. So when the children are studying in the school, the radiation level is low, but when they are playing, they are here, because this is the most interesting area. And actually this school in Jalovka, it was decontaminated, but the soil was from a nearby village. And here is another school, schoolyard, and this was also decontaminated. So here they put asphalt on the schoolyard. So the asphalt is here in the middle, but then there is grass and soil above it now. And you can see the level is very low here. But on the sides, where they didn't decontaminate, because there are trees and other things growing here, the radiation level is still quite high. And what I'm trying to illustrate with those pictures is how inhomogeneous the levels are. It's not symmetrical on any scale. It's very different. So, 100 by 100 square meters. And this is only 10 by 10 square meters. This is the surface outside the post office actually in Jalovka. And here you can see how inhomogeneous the pattern is. 10 meters, 10 meters. And it's a factor of 10, 15, the variation here. You see, hot spots here, but also cold spots in this small area. So of course, if you're standing here, your dose is slightly different from if you are here. And the same thing on the other pictures. So this sums up to some exposure to the individuals living here. So here is from 1986 till 2008. The internal dose and the external effective dose. And as you can see, it drops very fast the first years after the accident. And I should say also this is from cesium, only cesium, around 137. And also in the beginning it was included cesium 134. So the external effective dose is dropping slower and slower. And now during the recent years it's almost equivalent to the physical decay of cesium, and a small component from the migration down in the soil. And the total effective dose is also dropping, but not so fast, because this internal component, as you can see here, for example this, it was, as I heard, it was a very successful mushroom year, so everybody was eating a lot of mushrooms, and that is the explanation for this peak. But the internal effective dose is strongly influenced by the availability of forest products, and you can see it in the measurements here. Oh, so the internal effective dose, the fluctuations are very irregular, but during the recent years it has been quite linear, not linearly. But maybe next year or in a few years it can go up much more due to the abundance of forest products. And also it depends on social and economical factors. So frequent consumption of forest products gives on average 5 times higher whole body contents. But individually it can be much more. It can be 15, 20 times higher. And I also did a comparison with the internal effective dose in Novosibirsk and in the villages. And in the villages it was 3 times higher than in Novosibirsk, where they tend to eat more imported food. And then the participation in those studies have decreased with quite a lot. So it becomes more and more difficult to continue the project. Oh, here is just a picture of the internal effective dose in those Bryansk villages in St-Petersburg 2011 and in 2012 in Bryansk. And as you can see, the doses are decreasing. The figures I showed you previously, it was average of all age groups. But the most homogeneous group is the women. Because the women tend to eat similarly and they tend to have similar works. So if you should compare groups, it should actually be the women group. And here is also interesting, you are speaking about dose to representative person, according to the ICRP. And if you calculate the dose to the representative person, you end up with this number, 1.1 millisievert per year in 2012. And this is actually the limit for implementing dose reduction countermeasures. And this is based on measurements on indoor workers that eat forest products. So if you include, for example, hunters and people working a lot in the forest, this number will be much higher. But this is the average number for a representative person. Just that. And now to the salt. In St-Petersburg we were measuring with salt, ordinary salt in packages, to investigate the dose levels, how it varies. Inside and outside houses, and even on people wearing it. And, what should I say? So, we had also TLDs in the same holders. TLD and salt. So here is TLD dose against measurement with the radiation protection instruments. And here is the dose to the salt against this radiation protection instrument. It's a sodium iodine detector. 2008, 2009 and 2010. And as you can see, there is a linear trend in the TLD, which is expected, but also in the salt. The salt also can measure quite low doses and have a response to radiation. So here are the calculations for St-Petersburg. People living in wooden houses, people living in brick houses, if they are working indoor or outdoor. And as you can see, the model agrees very good with sodium iodine detector measurements, salt measurements, and TLD measurements. So this is a promising technique to use the salt to measure radiation doses instead of lithium fluoride in TLDs. Especially if you are going to measure in a lot of places. So, You can get up to 30% higher effective dose if you're an outdoor worker, according to those measurements. So some finishing words. The radiation exposure varies on both small and large scales, as we could see. And the dose rate reduction is about 10% during the previous 6 years. And it's getting more and more difficult to get reliable results. First of all, the doses become lower, but also it's difficult to get people to participate in these studies after such a long time after the accident. And this important thing, dose per representative person is about 1 millisievert still. The internal and external effective doses are varying over time, but the internal effective dose is becoming more important because the external effective dose is dropping quite linearly, but the internal effective dose can rise very much. For example, if you eat a lot of forest products or if you have only access to such food. And you can use this optically stimulated luminescence technique in ordinary salt to measure radiation doses. And finally, this variability in the radioactive fallout, it must be considered, especially when taking soil samples or when performing in situ gamma spectrometry. So you need to have a technique for that and to consider this. And I think also it's important to pay attention to those variations and those changes, to continue to follow the Chernobyl variations for the current event and the event in Japan and future events also. And it should also be considered to change conversion coefficients from measured doses to effective doses, because the conversion coefficients we are now using is based on fresh fallout, but when it penetrates down in the soil it gets shielded and the geometry is changing and also the energy. So this is important when calculating effective doses. And by this I say спасибо большое и все.
Спасибо. Есть ли вопросы к выступающим?
Можно вопрос?
Да.
Скажите, пожалуйста, вы вот как исследователь, там был график, значит, Светиловичи, это Гомельская область, это зона свыше 15 кюри, на сегодняшний день тоже свыше 15 кюри, и Брянск вы сравниваете. Может быть, сам Брянск или деревни. Почему, с вашей точки зрения, в Светиловичах эффективная доза облучения меньше? Следующий, еще. По-моему, вот это. Значит, меньше, чем в Брянске.
Why it's less than Bryansk?
Да, Брянский Светиловичи, желтый Светиловичи.
Because you see, it's Svetilivici in 2011 and Bryansk 2012. And here it's depending on the group of people. So when we were in Svetilivici, we were in the kindergarten and in the school. So the people that were men in the school, it was the principal and some teachers and people working in the school or the kindergarten. But in Bryansk, we were in the administration building, so people came from the whole village. Farmers, hunters, it was a lot of different people.
То есть в Светиловичах исследовались и дети в основном, и, по-моему, работники.
Да,
а в Брянске это там были и охотники, и очень большая группа. Всех, кто приходили в администрацию.
Ну, я поняла, но мне кажется, это не совсем правильно.
Да, то есть несравнимые группы населения.
С моей точки зрения, это несравнимые группы населения. Извините, это моя точка зрения. Это не совсем правильно.
Cannot compare groups.
No, exactly, and this is important. It shows on how difficult it is. But what you can compare, I told you, What you can it's correct. But the women, you can compare, because the women have similar habits, and they have similar work, those that participate in the studies. So this group is homogeneous.
Женщин можно сравнивать, они одинаковые и там, и там.
Ладно, не будем спорить. Спасибо.
Есть ли еще у кого-нибудь вопросы к выступающим? Да, пожалуйста, представляйте.
What method to detect radiation level in soil? I mean, in sodium chloride.
Ja, internal effective doses, it was sodium iodine detector in the stomach. They put it like this, palmar geometry.
It's similar to TLT.
What did you say? The salt?
Yes.
The salt is ordinary salt that you use for food.
Yes, but the question is how to use this.
Jaha,
Everybody is
okay.
interested how to use it
Yes.
for the properties.
No, that is another thing. Till this lithium fluoride, you heat it, and then it releases luminescence, which is proportional to the dose. You empty electron traps.
But first you should contaminate it.
Not contaminate.
Not contaminate.
Only expose it. So you can take a salt package here and a cesium source here and radiate it for some time. About 1 millisievert, 1 milligrade is enough. And then you don't heat it. You irradiate it with light, blue light. And when you stimulate it with blue light, it emits luminescence also. The same way as lithium fluoride emits luminescence.
So the rate of luminescence is depending on the irradiation, yes?
No, the blue light.
Yes, but you detect luminescence, yes?
Oh, yes, yes.
And the rate of luminescence depends on the dose this salt got, yeah?
Oh, yes, yes. So the gamma dose to the salt excites electrons in the salt crystal.
Я думаю, что все будет понятно.